The 9 to 5 gig is doing physical therapy or something similar. The problem is physical therapy is when you see people at the end of their journey in a lot of ways, right? If they haven't done treating themselves well for 20 years and they end up with knee pain and back pain and a knee replacement or whatever it is, that was so unrewarding to me quickly because I thought, okay, I want to help this guy 20 years ago. What are we not doing? What's the system not doing for him? That's when the light bulb went off for me is I got to go, as I'd say, like upstream care. And I have to get to the most preventive side of healthcare as absolutely possible.
Hello, and welcome to Working Your Way, the podcast dedicated to exploring the journey of authenticity in the workplace and discovering how to navigate it your way. I'm your host, Sandhya Sudhakar, and today I am thrilled to welcome Aaron Witwer to the show. Aaron is the Chief Impact and Stewardship Officer at BenEngage, a role that perfectly combines his passion for health equity and his expertise in health and wellness plan design. In this episode, Aaron shares his career evolution from his early aspirations in sports medicine and physical therapy to his current mission of building ethically and equitably designed health plans. We explore the turning points that shaped his career, including his bold leap into entrepreneurship and the lessons that he learned along the way. Aaron also opens up about what's been hard about taking big risks and creating meaningful change in an industry that is fraught with complexity. We dive deep into purpose and fulfillment in this episode, and we talk about how he's pursued it at every step along his career path. I know this is going to be a really helpful episode for anyone that might be feeling a little bit lackluster in their current work, and I think it'll inspire you to look into how you can bring that spark back into your career. Okay, let's get into it. All right. Hi, Aaron. Welcome to Working Your Way. I'm excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited as well. I wore my bright shirt to show you how excited I am.
I can see it in your clothing. I can always usually also see your excitement on your face because you're just a pretty positive, upbeat kind of guy. So
I try. Like a lot of people got it a lot worse than I do. So I should be smiling every day.
So I was thinking about how long we've known each other as I was thinking about this conversation, and I can't even really pinpoint how young we were when we probably first met. I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
In Columbus, right. Indiana, you and I grew up together in a way, and our paths have crossed so many different points of our lives, whether it was like high school or college, or even in this kind of like more entrepreneurial chapter of our careers. And so I think that's been pretty fun. But it feels like only appropriate to kind of rewind a little bit to start and talk about, way back when. So I'm curious, did you have something that you wanted to grow up and do when you were a little guy?
I just always remember being really interested in medicine of some kind. So when I did Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts and stuff, and at each of those stages, you learn first aid and you learn, what if you break your leg in the woods and you have to splint it with a piece of wood from a branch and that kind of stuff. I always got so excited. That was the stuff I loved. And so I knew early just going through that little bit of stuff. I wasn't grossed out. If someone cut themselves, I'd be like, okay, I got it. I always thought, okay, I could do medicine. And my grandfather did medicine. This is his stethoscope actually right there behind me. And this just seemed natural for me. So I always thought something in healthcare. I was always really interested in it. Tried to get some experience with it when I was young. And that took me enjoying sports as well, just naturally. I thought, oh, well, maybe these two can go together somehow. And then that at IU took me to kinesiology and sports medicine. And so that was the direction I went for my master's degree. So it all followed, and it all felt really natural, really appropriate at every step. I never once thought ever along the way, this doesn't seem right. I was like, yep, this is it. This is what I should be doing.
It's so interesting because, I mean, I don't often hear even those early kind of interests as a kid so directly translating into a career. And I'm sure when we're kids, right, and especially in the 80s, it's there's like a handful of jobs that you like know about, right? So maybe it was like, I want to be a doctor, and then it's shifted over time, right? As you've layered on different pieces of interest and what you care about. And
Oh, for sure.
so it's so interesting.
Well, it went from I probably have to be a doctor to, well, I don't think I'm going to be a doctor, to learning what physical therapy was and think, oh, that's it. Like that's sort of like sports and medicine. So that was what I had in my head. But it really just, once you go somewhere like Indiana University, which has, whatever it is, dozens of majors, and you sort of get into it, you realize, oh, there's a bunch of things that are sort of interesting in this general like public health realm that I probably would be good at, that are appropriate for me. So that's how I kind of found sports medicine. But funny enough, even though that path felt really natural and really appropriate for a long time, I did not stick in it very long, and got my master's degree and sort of ceased using it after just a few years being a working professional in that world, feeling like this isn't what I should be doing.
How did you recognize that like frustration for you? Because you were doing like physical therapy, athletic training, for that period of time.
So in sports, I did feel that way because you'd see. You were working with athletes, so they're all young, right? Everybody's in their 20s and everybody's really healthy, and they'd hurt themselves, and it would be really rewarding to get them all fixed up and get them back on the field. But that's also a tough gig because it's like nights and weekends. I mean, ask people what they're doing tonight and this weekend, and if they're interested in sports, they're like, oh, I'm going to watch sports. Or I'm going to watch sports on Sunday. I'm going to watch sports on Christmas. I'm going to watch sports on Thanksgiving. Yeah, well, there's an athletic trainer and a whole medical staff doing the same thing and working and sitting there on the sidelines. And I started to figure that out. I was like, oh, I don't think I want to do this. And so the 9-to-5 gig is doing physical therapy or something similar. The problem is physical therapy is when you see people at the end of their journey in a lot of ways, right? If they haven't been treating themselves well for 20 years and they end up with knee pain and back pain and a knee replacement or whatever it is, that was so unrewarding to me quickly, because I thought, okay, I want to help this guy 20 years ago.
Yeah.
What are we not doing? What's the system not doing for him? That's when the light bulb went off for me, is I got to go, as I'd say, like upstream care. And I have to get to the most preventive side of healthcare as absolutely possible. And that's what led me to corporate health. And that's what ultimately got me into health insurance, because you're talking to CEOs and you're talking to business owners about how to design health plans, which is in and itself like kind of a strange, just learning about how we provide health insurance to half this country is usually through their employer, or at least for that percentage. So you want to put it in the hands of a business owner who they know how to make widgets or, build furniture, whatever it is they do for a living. And you want to put it in their hands and have them design health insurance plans for everybody else in the company. It's just a recipe for it to not go well, because it's not educated. And so it's been an interesting over the last, 10 to 15 years getting into that world and realizing this is really broken. This is like not working for people. No wonder I was seeing all these people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s who were just in bad shape and hadn't felt like the system was working for them. In a lot of ways, in my mind, I am at the very precipice of preventive, right? If I can design a better health plan that offers better, more affordable care to those employees, and you catch those employees when they enter the workplace in their 20s, 30s, presumably, right? The dream, the vision is now they feel supported and encouraged to take care of themselves, take care of all the preventive care, not have to worry about avoiding an MRI that they really need in their 30s and wait till their 50s and realize it's a bad knee and now you have to have a knee replacement. And there's just a lot, everybody could have a story about that they've avoided care. We call it rationing care. This country does a lot of care rationing, And
is it generally financial or convenience or a number of different factors?
some people avoid it because they go, oh, I don't want to get my colonoscopy because it's not going to be, comfortable. That's one
Right.
thing.
It's not fun, probably. Yeah.
But I think, colonoscopies don't cost anything. It's preventive care. It's covered. People will avoid it, but not forever and ever. Usually the majority of people, especially people who really, really need it, they avoid it for cost. Maybe not preventive care, but they'll avoid it for cost, or they'll avoid it because it's going to take them 2 buses and 8 hours, and they're going to have to take off work, and the system's not built to treat them on the weekends or nights. And so they just go, I can't afford to do it. And then when they, maybe I can get my colonoscopy, but then after that, when they want to have a procedure, or they want to do an MRI, or they want to do an ultrasound, or they want to do something else, all of that costs money. On almost every single health plan, that's going to be a copay. It might be a deductible, might have a co-insurance share. That could be hundreds or maybe thousands of dollars. And there's a lot of people in this country that's a deal breaker. And they go, nah, I'm fine. And so that's what we call rationing care. You're like, should I have gotten that care? Yes, but I didn't.
Right. Which then leads to a larger problem down the road.
Yeah, everybody knows. Everybody listening to this thing is going to be like, oh, yeah, I've probably done that a few times. Like, I should have done that and that. My doctor does want me to go get that done 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I haven't for whatever reasons. And I am super interested in that. That's what I'm focused on right now, is to make sure people don't have to ration care and, build the right system, build the right health insurance plan. It's not just about health insurance. That's the vehicle right now that people get a lot of their care through. That's what I'm really interested in. So that trajectory has gotten me to the most preventive. How do I get people right away, right when they enter the workforce, when they're younger? How can we start that process and make care more affordable and accessible?
So what was the first step for you going from physical therapy and training into kind of a, behind the desk job, so to speak?
Working in the physical therapy clinic, and got really interested in corporate health just because I was learning about what I had talked about. Like, oh, that would be really interesting, corporate health. So corporations are hiring PTs and other people to come in and help get their people more healthier. Japanese companies, I don't know if you started this, but I think classically they'll do like stretches and exercises before their shifts. And I found that kind of stuff that some American companies do, probably more now than they did 20, 25 years ago. But I found that really interesting. Oh, that's a better way. Like that, we're taking care of folks. I'm like, And you're getting to them before they're injured, before they would see me in the PT clinic. And now I'm very, very interested in that. And that just took me to doing wellness coaching and like corporate health coaching realm. That got me to a job at the Cleveland Clinic, where it was a wellness institute. And then that job, I had become familiar with an insurance brokerage firm here in Cleveland. And they said, you should come over here because we talk to employers all day long. I mean, all sorts of small employers and large employers all over the place. We want to talk to them more about health and wellness. And, that again really, really appealed to me. Oh, wait, we're going to talk to hundreds of companies a year. That's really what I want to do. Before that, I sort of understood insurance, and I'd seen it as a clinician, and it was a bother, and you're not getting reimbursed very well, and seeing it happen. But that was at the brokerage firm, that was my real education in health insurance. That was my eyes wide open about how insurance carriers and the hospital systems are in cahoots about what things cost, and the transparency of cost, the lack of transparency. Now that then took me to say, okay, well, I don't like this, but I still like talking to lots and lots of employers. So I still want to do that. I just don't want to do it that way and promote those kinds of plans anymore.
It's interesting because it is like, I mean, you described this and you're aware of it, right? It's like the step from helping one individual to helping multiple individuals from within a company. And then stepping outside of the company to say, how do I actually help lots of companies? And then it was like, oh, I don't like the way the system works. So like, what's a different way to do it? This step toward kind of like, one, getting closer to the root cause of the issue, and two, kind of scaling your impact in a way. And I'm curious if you Like, it sounds like you were aware of those steps along the way, but also you had so many moments where you went from, step A to step B and B to C and C to D. What made that all happen? Like, if I'm a young person early in my career and I'm like, how do I get toward that? Keep making steps toward that, like, call it a dream job or like a great fit purpose wise. What do you make of your journey and what would you tell people?
My advice when I talk to kids in their 20s that feel like I'm not going to figure it out and I'm never going to figure it out, it doesn't seem right and I can't see the future. Well, one, you will look back and you can ask anybody in their 50s and 60s to look back at what they did when they were 18 and what they thought. It's nothing like it, almost to the T. You don't have to ask people in their 50s and 60s. You can ask them in their 40s. Did you think you were going to be doing this exact thing in this exact way when you were 18, 19, 20, even 25? No, almost certainly not. So that's one thing. Don't get too anxious. Just keep going. And the second, though, is meet a lot of people, ask a lot of questions, and just be really interested. Be curious. So that's my piece of advice for young professionals still not feeling like it's quite right what they're doing is just be really, really curious. And so my path, though, where the curiosity took me was meeting a lot of people, asking a lot of questions, cold emails, cold phone calls to like the guy that ended up hiring me to do my wellness coaching, my first wellness coaching job. I had an interaction with, and I don't even remember if I called him or emailed him or not. And I just said, I'm really interested in this. I'd like to learn more. And I think we had one or two phone conversations. He said, I think you're very personable. I think you'd be good at wellness coaching. Do you know anything about that? And so it just progressed from there. And I did. I really liked it. That was very fun to talk to people on a one-on-one basis, help them with their goal setting. It felt like treating patients, but it felt like I was getting ahead of it in a lot of ways. So yeah, my piece of advice is be really curious, but meet a lot of people.
It feels like, one, you didn't stick around too long in jobs where you felt like that sense. To me, it sounds like a sense of dissatisfaction. Call it frustration, call it, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then combined with kind of constantly meeting people, learning what's out there, right? Exploring what opportunities even exist, because half of these jobs, it sounds like you didn't even know were jobs that you could have until you talked to enough people.
Yes, that is exactly right. Which is, you don't learn about this stuff until you ask and you're in it, right?
Yeah.
I work at an insurance brokerage firm. Well, what do people do there? I wouldn't have been able to tell you before that they had people that did health and wellness and they hire nurses sometimes, and no idea. I had no idea that was a real job. That was a real thing. So yeah, absolutely being curious. I probably have been also, again, this is probably good and bad. I don't want to give this as advice per se, but like as soon as I felt like this wasn't quite right, like purposeful enough, like I was looking for what else would be more purposeful, but in the same vein. I suppose that my search for purpose, like at every stage, has been, where do I go to have more purpose in life? Like feeling like every day, what do you do? Oh, I find ways to make healthcare more affordable, more accessible for people. Like every step of the way I can say that. And that's what I've been searching for. And there's so many different ways to do that though, too. And you don't know until you make connections. But that's what I've been doing the last 5.5 years. And it wouldn't have been as easy as just sitting at the brokerage firm for the next 25 years, because I probably could have. I'd be making more money, 9-to-5 gig, good company, good people. It just wasn't.
Yeah.
It didn't scratch that purpose itch. It wasn't because I wasn't making enough money and I needed to hurry up and go make more money or have some title. It had nothing.
Right.
Those were like,
you weren't miserable every day walking into it at all.
No, not at all.
So that 2019 move, was that your first move from insurance brokerage? But hey, I'm recognizing like this isn't a good way of doing health insurance. And so then you stepped out, took a big risk. It was really hard.
Yes.
And went from there.
You and I talked about that quite a bit in those few years, I think, too.
We did.
We were connecting a lot about that.
going from the insurance work from traditional health plans, right, into your first step getting very much closer to what you're doing now, it's a different way of doing healthcare, right? And this idea of like health equity, like how do you build better plans, ones that meet needs better, ones that cost less? Where'd you kind of learn like, oh, this is the space that I want to be in?
I learned it around 2016, 2017 by reading a lot, emailing and calling people. So I really had to find some folks. But there's like this one particular gentleman that was sort of in the wellness world, which is where I was at the time, but was also asking a lot of questions. But he had written a couple books and he was out in social media all the time, still is. And he really is the reason that I even got turned on to it. But once I found it, it's almost like, I don't know, whatever it would be, like finding your favorite food or something, or like finding your favorite vacation spot. You're like, I had no idea this even existed. Now I can go all the time and I can tell everybody else about it. But once you find it, you realize, oh, you're not the first one to find this at all. That launched me into just finding the people that I could talk to and say, I'm feeling this way. Is this how you feel? I say, oh yeah, we did the same thing. We left the old firm, or I used to do this kind of insurance work and now I don't do this kind of insurance work. And this is how I've done it. And this is what I've changed. And this is how I do my work. And then that just fed it until I couldn't stand it anymore in 2019. So, and that's when I quit. I was just like, I cannot do this. And I was very candid with the firm too. I was just like, if we can't do this, like, I don't know that I can do it. I probably should just sit here and shut up and just do this thing. Cause it's not terrible, awful work. It's not like evil work, nothing like that. It's just like, it's not purposeful enough. It wasn't like ethically aligned enough for me. We gotta do this. I gotta go. If we're not gonna do this, I gotta go.
I really love how Aaron combined two things in how he navigated his career. Following that pull towards something meaningful and kind of wanting to make a bigger and better impact at each stage, and following his curiosity and talking to people at every opportunity he got to discover more about what's out there. Now, when we're young, at least for those of us who grew up in the 80s, we only had visibility to a small set of jobs. One, because we didn't have so much information right at our fingertips like we do today. And two, because a lot of the jobs that we might be doing today didn't even exist when we were little. And I think even if you are living here in 2025 and you have a lot of access to all this information, it's important to think about finding your dream career or this kind of ultimate fit as a process. So many people that I talk to, whether it's people I encounter in my career coaching or people I know who are thinking about leaving corporate jobs or trying to make a pivot, are putting so much pressure on themselves to have the perfect answer. And I think a lot of times that keeps them from just taking that first step towards something better. They're aiming for perfection instead of that something better. And they're trying to get all the way there to find the perfect career instead of just getting closer to something that's great. They might spend a lot of time sitting at their computer or researching or journaling or even just talking to people, trying to dream up this ideal state in their work, when actually you can take one step at a time and get there in a more meaningful way. And then the reality is that you don't even know what would work for you or not work for you, or what you might actually feel versus what you might imagine that you'll feel until you actually do it. And I get it, leaving a job is really scary and not everybody has a high tolerance for risk. But I hope you can take some inspiration from Aaron and think about how you might open up new possibilities one step at a time. It'll lead you closer to what you love doing, and you'll be able to meet people along the way who can help open your mind and open doors to new options that maybe you didn't even know about. Okay, let's get back into the conversation as Aaron shares more about how his energy was a really good source of information on what worked for him and what didn't. How do you know that something isn't aligned or isn't like filling that bucket for you? Like, are there signs emotionally, physically, mentally that you recognize in yourself?
I think that what I recollect around that, 2018, 2019, I don't think I was quite myself energy wise.
Uh-huh.
That's sort of what I recall. It's like I knew too much about what we could be doing, but we weren't really. And I wasn't doing really what I wanted to be doing, but we could. But I was torn about like, can I do it myself? And who else is out there? And can I be supported? And what if I make this leap and I don't have support or I don't know what I'm doing enough? But I think that constant conversation with myself wore me out. And I think it just came to a head. But ultimately, I think what it would be if I could rewind, if I could sort of see myself from afar, it was probably energy. It was probably frustration. It would come out in
Yeah.
any way, any possible way, being frustrated with the kids or being frustrated with work or my boss or whatever it is. It's hard when you're not energized by what you're doing. It's just so hard to be who you want to be, like be the right person. So that's sort of what I recall. But it wasn't bad. The job wasn't bad.
Yeah.
People leave because they have awful bosses or the job is awful or they don't get paid enough or no one respects them. We didn't have any of that.
Yeah, I think there's this like kind of you could have a job that is like soul sucking. Like people know what that
Yes.
feels like. It's miserable. You like come home, you're angry or, like whatever it is. And then you can have a job that fills your bucket that like, wow, every day I feel like I am making an impact. I'm getting closer to
Yeah.
changing something, to helping somebody, to whatever it is. And then there could be that neutral space, which I think a lot of people live in. And I think that that's an okay thing, especially when you're navigating difficult life stages or, like big life changes. And so I think thinking about it is like not everything is either soul sucking or like dream job. There's like so much gray space in between, and paying attention to what it is that really drives you and how much you need that from work.
Yeah. That's what I was able to finally come to the conclusion, like this was going to be good for me. This change, for better or worse, was going to be good for me. And, Emily, my wife, was on board. She's like, yes, you need this, I think. Like, this is okay. I think you need it. I think this is fine to do. And it was, right? Because it got me to purpose. It got me a little more autonomy. And it filled my bucket from like a skill, right? So what is it? Daniel Pink in Drive, right? I think summarizes it as autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Yeah.
That really like engages people. It really like, I think he uses motivation. You really want people to do something. You really, really want them to do it. Give them some autonomy to do it the way they think is best. Feed them intellectually so they can be good at what they do. Everybody loves being good at something. And make it purposeful. Make sure they understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
And so that can go both ways. But for me, I needed to get there. And they just, even going off on my own, doing consulting right away, it filled them for a lot of it. It just was a risk, but it's been totally worth it in the long run.
Yeah. And that first year was that first step toward, okay, I'm filling the purpose bucket, but like financial security and stability and all of those things were like that the foundation dropped out in a way. And yeah, you and I did have lots of conversations about how hard entrepreneurship is and self-employment and the uncertainty of how much money you're going to make. And so what were then the next kind of like series of, I'm getting closer to this, or I'm checking a box that I didn't have before? What did that look like for you?
What I realized at that point was I needed to get ever closer to, how do health plans get built? How could I build a better one or be part of building a better one and get it in front of people and feel 100% confident that it is equitable. Like I'll even say, which is, I don't know that I've ever heard anyone else say it this way, an ethically and equitably designed health plan. That's what I have in my mind. And once I started to see other people already doing it, I was like, this is it. I'm on fire about this. Now I have to go figure out How exactly do they do it? How could I do it? How can I be involved? Where do I fit? And that was that journey starting in early 2020 and having a couple consulting gigs and ultimately finding, like a full-time job in mid 2021, which felt like forever to not have like a real job. Talk about autonomy. That was way too much autonomy. But I was getting all the other, like I was getting smarter about this. I was going to conferences. I was talking to all the people that I needed to be talking to that have been doing this for a few years or 10 years or more. It's still a very new, like niche, building equitable health plans, right? That like genuinely, when an employer provides this health plan, the lowest paid worker in that company has access to high quality care at low cost or none. That's what I'm driving for, right? It's called value-based care, right? The equation for value is high quality, low cost, right? You buy a Honda, you buy high quality good, as long as it's appropriately priced, that is value, right? That's the definition. That's what we're going for in health insurance, like that kind of plan. So those steps and talking to a bunch of people and figuring, again, networking, it's not really networking. It just was, I was so curious. Well, what do you do and how do you do it? And what do you do and how do you do it? And oh, your company does that and you're that one little piece of it and your company does that. And it just was so energizing. And so for all the financial shortcomings that we had, because I wasn't making nearly as much money, half as much, I didn't ever think that it would last, and it hasn't. But I needed that energy to keep me going forward. Otherwise, you will stay where you are, which I could have done with low energy and just ridden it out. But I needed that because it's now taken me to a place where I feel like every single day I'm making an impact on somebody's life, like really positively making a change and forcing, sort of like annoyingly pushing this industry forward. When in 2020, I needed the energy to feed all the other moves. So I've then made two moves, right? It was the job 2021 and then this job that I've had since the middle of 2022. Those were really important steps. And that was all because I was on fire about it. It was just purpose was filled. And so I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to go to conferences. I wanted to read books. I wanted to read the papers. That's got me where I am now.
For Aaron, as he mentioned, he wanted to find that thing in his career where he would find that fire being lit up by what he was doing, the ability to do something that really matters to him and have an impact in that way. Now, I can say for myself, I am also someone who needs that deep sense of purpose in my work. I like working. I like contributing to something and adding value and impacting people. And I do it in a very different way than Aaron does. Now, not everybody is looking for this level of purpose in work, and I think that's okay. We talked about this in episode 26 of Working Your Way with my guest, Justin Grant. And there's a good framework out there that says we can have a job, a career, or a calling. And whatever that desire is for you, it's totally good. Even just asking yourself the question of how important is it to me to feel a sense of purpose in my work? That's a great place to start. Now, if you're someone who looks at your work as a means to an end for things outside of your job, things like I just want to go to work to collect a paycheck so I can live my life, that would be considered a job. Now, if you consider your work a career, that means that you look at your work as a way to advance in some way. Maybe that's all about climbing the ladder to get to a higher level or developing your expertise in something or even advancing knowledge in your field. Now, if you think of your work as a calling, that's where you really want to find purpose and you want to pursue moves that bring you closer to that sense of purpose. Now, if you want to spend a little more time with this idea, I would definitely suggest checking out episode 26 of Working Your Way. And a little later in the episode, we're going to dive more into the work that Aaron referenced by Daniel Pink about autonomy, purpose, and mastery later in the episode. So for now, let's get back to the conversation. And so you mentioned earlier this example of, preventative care, like somebody who is a shift worker who has to take 3 buses to get to a doctor's office just to do the same thing that maybe a salaried worker from home can like cut out in the middle of the day and drive 5 minutes to go to their primary care doctor. Like the when you talk about ethical and equitable health plans, it's not just about cost, like flat out cost, right? Like talk a little bit about what does that really mean, what you're building?
Yeah, unfortunately, in this country, when we say access to healthcare, it doesn't mean, to your point, that there's a hospital within a couple miles of you. It means that you might not be able to get from your apartment to that hospital when you need it, or that it would take too long to schedule the appointment, or you wouldn't be able to afford it when you got there, or you wouldn't understand what they're talking about, like a health literacy gap. And so all that is part of like the social drivers, the social determinants of health. And so you've got, access to quality care, just simply access to care, safety, community, air quality, water quality. All of these things are part of like what makes someone whole, what makes them healthy, defines their health.
Yeah.
We don't do a good job. Well, first of all, health insurance plans don't do a particularly good job of filling a lot of those voids, and neither do employers. It's not their job to address water quality in neighborhoods. But they're hiring people in those neighborhoods, but also hoping that they will, show up to work on time, even though they have to take 2 or 3 buses, and that they will, be engaged in work because they're not distracted because, a kid is sick or 2 kids are sick, or like there's problems at home, or there's a problem, personally, or they're, because they just have different social determinants. There's different things driving safety in a neighborhood is actually a really big issue. Access to food, access to healthy food. We've heard of food deserts, right? Food deserts are a real thing. If what you have actually access to most of the time is a convenience store, a bodega around the corner from your house, you're not going to have fresh fruits and vegetables. You're going to have a lot of processed foods. That's what people eat. How do you think they're going to be? How do you think they're going to feel? And we expect people to come to work at their best. We can't possibly assume that they can. So if then you zoom out and think, okay, if we're already providing health care, right, access to care in health insurance. So I'm the employer and I'm going to offer this to you. Here you go. Here's your health care. Well, what other parts are we missing that we could fill in for them that would really, really help? Is that free daycare? Is that bus passes? Is it food delivery? Is it food at work? Is it, is paying for their internet, their Wi-Fi at homes? All these things that many, many of us take for granted, just don't think about on a daily basis. Because your point, you could just hop in the car and like go get your appointment and come back and be like, I'll make up my work tonight. I'll figure it out. Well, not if it's a shift, not if you have 2 jobs, not if you got to go pick your kids up. You're a single parent. You don't have a car, any of those issues. So how do we get as close to possible? How can a health plan reasonably come as close as possible to filling in as many of those social drivers as possible? That's going to be a long road, but there are health plans now that do an incredible job of filling up a lot of those gaps. Because if someone feels like they can get virtual care at $0 for them and their family, they don't need to get on a bus. They don't need to do, that's just an example, but those fill a few voids. You sort of, as you think like, oh, well, yeah, I guess that would be huge if I could get a lot of virtual care. And that it wouldn't cost me a copay every time I go do anything. And that I do get off of work anytime I have doctor's appointments. And that if something awful, terrible happens financially, from a healthcare standpoint, that it's covered by the employer. Like those people just go, oh, wait, it won't cost me anything at all? And I could just do it from my phone? Well, what about my kid? Yeah. Okay, now I can deal with my food quality issue and, going to the bodega. Maybe I have more money in my pocket now. And I go, I could do that food delivery thing. That might work for me and my family. You just open up a lot of doors, and we're just doing a crap job in this country of like giving people access to care, like quality care. We just got a ways to go. That's my purpose though. That's what we're, and a whole group of us, hundreds of people in this country, probably thousands, are working on that, trying to make it better every day, trying to get it built so that it's more it's built into someone's daily life. They don't have to think really hard about it. That's the energy.
It's one of those things that's interesting that I say what you want about companies, but I do generally think a lot of employers like want to do the right thing. Obviously, cost-cutting profits are a big factor, but it sounds like you're probably doing a lot of education with employers about all these factors they've never considered, right? Even I'm sitting here and thinking about like air quality and, Wi-Fi and things like that are like, oh yeah, everything is health. Everything makes an impact on your health. And so are you having lots of those conversations?
Employers don't really want to deal with it all that much. They're not particularly skilled at it. I said it earlier that it's not really what they're good at. They've sort of been thrust into the thing. But so some are better at taking it on than others. They have the resources in-house to take care of it. Others are really relying on an insurance broker, an insurance consultant to really just do it for them. They want to be really hands-off and like, go do this for me. And sometimes you could put your trust, companies can put their trust in the wrong entity that isn't really looking out for them. And like, here's a health plan. It doesn't really check a lot of boxes, but it's a health plan.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, good. I have to move on with my day job. I have to go do whatever it is my company does. I don't want to worry about that. But when it becomes too expensive, then it comes to a head, which is what's happening all the time. And we hear about people that, oh, my insurance went up by 25% again. And oh, it went up by 45%. Oh, by 28%. It went up by, I had a client a couple of years ago, it went up with 72% increase. They're like, I actually don't know if we can even afford this. And that usually means the insurance company doesn't want you to renew, but still they're doing the math going, I'm actually not sure we can even do it. But I don't have a choice because the government has told me I need to. But more directly to the question, like, health plans are not built to make it easy for the employer to just like, oh, just chuck it in here and we'll be fine. What it takes is education, to your point. The employer has to sort of go, hold on, time out. We need to really understand what we're about to do here. I need to really take a step back. I need to really understand what I'm about to provide my employees. And when they do that, more often than not, they contact someone like me and my other colleagues, and they go, well, I need to get my hands around this, so why wouldn't I address the cost? Like, it's way too expensive at Cleveland Clinic. Why wouldn't I go to the other hospital? It's the same price. I think the quality is about the same for this thing. And I'd say, yeah, that's exactly right. That's how you control your costs. That's how you ensure your employees get good quality. But until they get their arms around it and sort of understand, then they're like, I don't want to deal with this. Just give me an insurance plan.
Yeah. And so having an expert who can say, hey, you don't need all of this, all these resources going here, but you do need them going here. And so you're doing that kind of like consultative work with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your job now is the Chief Impact and Stewardship Officer at Engage. How is it, you mentioned these kind of three buckets, right? And I'm very familiar with Daniel Pink's work in motivation because there's a lot of ties to the core motivations of like the 9 Enneagram types. All of it's rooted in this kind of psychological theory called the self-determination theory, where humans, we need autonomy, connectedness or relatedness, and competency. We need to feel those three things in order to feel like this sense of self-determination. I can change my place in life. And so I need to have agency over feel like I have agency over my actions. I need relatedness, right? Relationship to others and connection, and competence. I need to feel like I have the tools and the resources and the knowledge to do what I'm doing. And so Daniel Pink's theory is an iteration of that. But some of his work is so interesting because it is like basically debunking this idea of like, you pay people, you know this because you've read the book, but like if you pay people more to make more widgets faster, like that's fine. You can get more widgets. But when you're doing knowledge work, when you're doing innovation work, when you're doing these things that are not just like an equation of like units and time, you've got to really tap into all three of these elements. And so the elements for you, how do you know, like, okay, I have the right level of autonomy. I feel like I know enough to have that sense of mastery, and I'm getting that sense of purpose fulfilled. Like, what does it look like for you today in your job?
To go back, every step has tried to get me closer to those three things. And I didn't really realize it early on. Like I mentioned, whenever that book came out, I mean, soon after I think I read it, that really resonated with me. So then I knew, oh, that's actually what I've been searching for. By definition, that's what I'm searching for. And that helped. But before that, that's where I was going.
Yeah, you can connect the dots going backwards. Like you were looking for something different, right? But
Yes.
maybe not using that framework at the time. Yeah.
It wasn't. And I would have said early on in my career, well, no, I mean, I'm not going to do this if I don't get paid really well. But you really come to realize the older you get, the more jobs you have, the more you get paid in these number of ways. You go, that's not enough. That's like fifth, sixth, seventh most important thing. And I think, again, Daniel Pink says something like, you have to pay people just enough. You can't underpay them, but you have to pay them just enough. But if you give them autonomy, mastery, purpose, right, you can fill those buckets as much as possible. They won't beg for more money all the time. But the other way will happen for sure. And I have experienced that. If you're not filling their bucket, they probably are like, well, I don't want to do this stupid job. If I'm going to keep doing it, I'm going to get paid more. Once I realized what it was, and it was always purpose, but it was, I need to have a little more control over how I do my work. And I'm really fired up when I'm getting smarter about something I care about. And so that mastery was really, really important. So back, 2016, 2017, about that same time, I'm learning about this value-based care and these health plans that are being built from scratch. And I'm like, I want to learn how to do that. And so that just inspired me. Then I knew I could go years and years and years and not learn enough. And so that was my mastery, reading these books, meeting these people, asking. I needed those and I knew I was heading towards purpose. I was just really, really trying not to be too bound in, right, to hold on to some autonomy. But you do have to let some of that go. If you work for someone else, you don't want to be told what to do every single day all the time, right? That's not good management. That's not good leadership. But having mastery, feeling like you're allowed to get better at what you do and having purpose and you know where you're going to was everything. I would tell people that's what you're shooting for. And by the way, you'll get paid more along the way. Once I got there, I was like, oh, yep, I'll get paid less. It's fine. For now, I can get paid less because I need the other stuff. And it's 100% the right thing to do. Better husband, better father, better friend, all that stuff.
Yeah, I feel like, the conversation of fair and equitable pay, right, is like a very, very big one. And there's these, statistics of like, as long as you're over 70K a year, like you have enough money to live and like those kinds of things, it matters much less beyond that point. And so all of this stuff, I don't know, I'm not going to say like I know one way or another, but I do definitely think, I can apply it to my own life of like, I would be very happy making a bit less than I made in corporate because I have so much more freedom and flexibility in my lifestyle. And I think that for me does play into autonomy, even though it's, yes, within my work, but also over my life. Do I feel like I have a sense of agency, or do I feel like I'm strapped to my desk all day, every day, in which case I'm going to resent my company and I'm going to be like, you know what? You need to pay me way more to be miserable like this. And so there is that trade-off. And I think, I know what you're saying is not like pay people less and give them a sense of purpose, right? It's like,
right.
It's like that matters much less when you're filling those other buckets and when people feel like they have a sense of, okay, I'm living my life the way that I want to live it. I'm intellectually stimulated, I'm heart stimulated from a sense of purpose, and I feel like I'm making an impact and doing the things that I need to do. So, okay, I want to talk about these 3 things that we need at work to have that drive that we keep talking about: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I want to talk about specifically the trade-offs that we might make for them. Now, I can point to my own business, as I had kind of mentioned before. I make less money now than I did in the corporate world. And whether that will always be the case, who knows? I think that can change. But for now, I'm okay with that because, you know what? I can decide on a Monday that I don't have any client meetings or critical deliverables and I just don't feel like working, and I can do whatever I want for the day. Or regularly, I stop working at 3:30 or 4, and that leaves me time to work out or cook dinner or read a book in the afternoon. And so for me, In this chapter of my life, I'm happy to make less than I made before, but I own my days and I have lots of time for life stuff. And that equation is working for me. Now, the example that I mentioned before, if someone's working all day and night and they're feeling really resentful, they may say, like, this company better pay me more for everything that I'm giving to them. And that feeling of resentment is an important piece of data. I remember reading years ago, and I'm pretty sure it was in Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's book, We Should All Be Feminists. And she was talking about the division of household work between a husband and a wife. And as an example, how it's important to listen to that feeling of resentment. If you experience it, it's because it's often a sign that something is out of balance. And a lot of times we ignore that feeling. But if we actually use it as data, we get to inquire about what might be out of balance and what we can do to bring it back into balance. Now, outside of housework, obviously, we can apply this to our careers. And I deal with this a lot in terms of how I price my services. I might do a speaking engagement at a lower rate than I do it for a corporate organization if it's for a nonprofit that I really believe in the mission of and feel like I'm contributing to a cause that's really important for me. Or if it's for an organization that doesn't have a big budget, but the talk might get me in front of a lot of people who could potentially hire me, there's a different value equation there. There's what I'm getting paid, but there's also where that might go after that. And so I think about these trade-offs in my own business sometimes. And when I don't feel that sense of resentment, I know that this is a trade-off that I'm willing to make. But then the other day, I quoted someone a price for a workshop, and she immediately told me she doesn't have that high of a budget. And so I asked more questions, and I learned a bit more about who would be attending, and we tentatively talked about what she would be able to pay. Now, I immediately felt this kind of sinking ugh feeling, and as we got off the phone, I could feel that resentment kick in. I felt like she was being unfair to ask me to do something for a lower price that her group was going to get a ton of benefit out of. And frankly, there were some other things that happened during the conversation that we discussed that kind of tipped me off that maybe this group wanted a quick fix. And that for me is always a red flag specific to Enneagram work or really anything that I do. But I went with that feeling and I decided that this just wasn't an engagement that I want to take. Because the whole time I would be resentful of how little they're paying me because I felt like that value equation is just not equal. So I think this works especially well with pay and thinking about these three factors. If I'm learning and building that mastery, maybe I'm going to conferences and trainings and building new skill sets in my job, but I'm making a little less, it could be a worthy trade-off for some people for that knowledge and the skill sets that they're gaining and how much they feel mentally stimulated and engaged all day. You can think about this trade-off with purpose, with mastery, or with autonomy, and decide for yourself what's most important to you and what a worthy trade-off could look like. Just remember that that feeling of resentment can be a really great indicator of whether your trade-off feels like a good value exchange to you. Okay, let's get back to the conversation and hear about how Aaron is continuing to grow in his career and at his current company. So what's next for you in your, whether it's your career development or how you can be more authentic in the role you're in now? What do you think is on the horizon for your own development?
I think it's understanding how to grow this company to be more powerful is the term I would use. So when we think about the company and I think about it as a senior leader, it's how can it be more influential is probably a better way to put it. And so how do I become a better leader in the company, make sure that I'm good, so that I can take the lessons I've learned over the last 25, 30 years, use that to hire people, create a culture that's awesome. So not only are my employees awesome and they feel really good, but that all the other companies we're helping, that they can all exponentially help all these other people that I've always wanted to be helping. Because we're helping 50 companies. Well, those 50 companies are helping their 100 employees, and now you're helping thousands and thousands of people. And that that I need to be better at. I need to be better at being like a business owner slash leader, to say, I'm in charge of all these people. I'm in charge of this company and how we grow. And if my people aren't awesome, they don't feel great and valued, we won't do the work we're supposed to be doing. And so it's not just about me doing my work and my 2 or 3 people that work for me. It's like the whole company. That's going to be a shift for me to have to get my arms around and get more focus on that part so that they can all run the company, right? And make the thing happen.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm excited about. And, still get to do creative projects and still try to push the industry forward and make sure we're doing more value-based care. I'm feeling like I'm in the right realm, but that's where my growth is. That's all the stuff I'm going to be asking you about how to to be better at work.
That's a separate conversation.
That's a whole nother podcast series.
Hey, yeah. I mean, if you want to put your, put leadership coaching on display, like maybe we'll talk about that.
Yeah. Well, it would be a learning, it'd be a learning experience. People can tune in with their popcorn and go, oh no, this is not going to go well.
Right.
Oh, wow. Did you see that?
Can't believe he just said that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like a documentary series. You're like, oh, this is going to be an 8-parter. Yeah, this could be, oof. No, I have a lot to learn about that, but you always got to have coaches. You always got to have people. You have to have coaches. You have to have people. I think the best example, I remember when that resonated with me really, and this is stupid that this took me this long, but I think someone said, Tiger Woods has a hitting coach. I was like, oh, wait, I think he has like 3 coaches. And LeBron James has a shooting coach. And Steph Curry has a shooting coach. I'm like, oh no. Like I am like some sort of egomaniac that I have not hired. Like I've not hired, or like I'm constantly consulting with people about what I'm not doing well enough at. Because that's really what we should be doing. And the best of the best are using it. They have someone tweaking them. And I bet their shooting coaches and hitting coaches weren't better than them at golf or basketball. That doesn't matter. That's not what you need. They don't have to be better than you. They have to be introspective and they have to be, watching you. And so, yeah, that's been a lesson over the years too. Is like, oh yeah, you need some people you can really be a little vulnerable to and make sure they poke holes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's exactly it. It's like that person doesn't need to do the thing that you do. They need to be the right fit for you to show you where the things you're not seeing and ask you the questions that you maybe haven't considered. And
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for being on and sharing your career story and talking about what's important to you now.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay. I hope you loved that conversation as much as I did. We really went along this journey of Aaron's career path in this conversation. And I really love how he just kept taking one more step closer to that alignment of purpose, knowing what problem he wanted to solve in the world and continuing to get closer to the root of it where he could impact the most people downstream. And at the end of the talk, we talked about the value of coaches. Now, I'm going to link a great TED Talk here in the show notes, and it's actually one that I watched as a part of a grad school class that I took. And it's called Want to Get Great at Something? Get a Coach. Now, the speaker is a surgeon and a med school professor and shares some really good insight about the value of that outside perspective. Now, in this episode, we also talked about this framework of autonomy, mastery, and purpose quite a bit. And Aaron shared how relevant it's been in his own career and how it's helped him see how all of his career moves really made sense as he reflects back on them. Now, if you want to learn more about it, you can check out Daniel Pink's book. It's called Drive. Now, the basic theory of the book is all about how internal or intrinsic motivators are far more important in the modern work world than external or extrinsic motivators, things like money or titles or awards. Now, I always have to put this disclaimer out there whenever I talk about something like this because I am never telling anyone to underpay their employees or to do work and get paid less than what you're worth from a salary perspective, from a benchmark perspective, from a market perspective, right? Or even from your colleagues at work compared to them. But what I am saying is that money tops out at some point and is no longer going to motivate most people to work harder if that gets higher, if they don't have those other three things. So just to review them quickly, they are autonomy, being able to determine what you do, how you do it, where you do it, and even who you do it with. Mastery, feeling like you have the knowledge and the tools to excel in your work and a way to keep getting better at it. And purpose, a tie to the impact of your work, or knowing that what you're doing is contributing to something much bigger than yourself or your day-to-day work. Now, what's interesting and important about this research is that it also shows when you are tapping into those intrinsic motivators, you actually experience higher levels of job satisfaction, greater levels of commitment to your work, and less job-related burnout. So take a look at your current work through those three different lenses, and you may be able to find an area that you can improve, maybe even with the help of your manager, to better leave the day feeling satisfied, feel good about the work that you're doing, and to really achieve that sense of fulfillment from what you're doing.